Welcome to the Samuele Tini Show, where business, innovation and sustainability converge to drive progress. Are you ready to uncover solutions shaping our future? Let's dive in.
Welcome to a new episode. Today on the show, we are going again in the future market, how we call the emerging market, the future of the world. And we go again in the agribusiness, agri-food sector. And we're going to tackle an important step, traceability, how to enable traceability in the value chains. And we do it with an innovator, somebody that is a CEO and founder of Trusty, working with value chains in Africa. So thank you so much, Alessandro Kelly, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Samuele. It's a pleasure for me.
And Alessandro, it's so good to have sometimes also an Italian and an innovator on the show. And before discussing how you enable your work with cooperatives in this market, to ensure traceability, EUDR and others, can you tell us in a nutshell, what is your professional journey? How you have become a tech expert?
Yes, absolutely. I started in engineering and product development, particularly after I graduated in computer science. So we firstly co-founded with my colleague Lorenzo Di Berardino a first startup that are focused on Internet of Things and energy. And during this experience, we start working with manufacturers, food companies, and other type of companies that works in agri-food supply chain, the whole agri-food supply chain. And we see how hard it is to collect the data from the field, keep it consistent, share across partners. So we start working in democratize data sharing in agri-food supply chain, and this experience led us to co-found Trusty to create a product for data sharing in agri-food supply chain.
Thank you so much, Alessandro. And there is a lot of buzzword, blockchains and other. I will go in depth in that because I'm also curious. I don't know. But before that, which was the specific gap in the agri-food sector that you wanted to address when you founded Trusty?
Yes, absolutely. As I starting saying, the gap, the problem in agri-food supply chain, it's the lack of reliable data, the lack of simple tool to collect the data and share data with not only customers. That was one of the first point that we started, to a QR code to share the whole story of the product with the customers. But then we see that the problem is not only for the customer that doesn't know where the product comes from, but it's mainly for authorities, certification authorities, other company in the same supply chain. So we started to address both. So we in Trusty, our mission in brief is to help agri-food business to prove origin, legality, sustainability, and all the information about the product and the company with verifiable data. So we combine a buzzword, blockchain technology, buzz technology. So we combine blockchain in order to create evidence and other technology and also other standards like GS1 standard to enable a backbone for data sharing that is secure and accepted by all the parties in a supply chain. So from the farmer, for example, in the coffee supply chain, to the trader, to the roaster, to the supermarket, retail, and then to the consumers.
And it's such an important part, especially for the sustainability and also to create trust, no? That the product, especially for consumers, are also ethically, they give also a fair value, no, to the farmer. And I want to ask, you said the importance of traceability. So, and we have discussed, especially in some episodes in the past, the traceability and the new debate, for example, in the EU about the EUDR, no, the deforestation regulation and others. So, can you explain to why traceability is so important for the agri-food supply chains, and then how also, in going a bit deeper, what does entail the EUDR?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question, because it is a very important question, because traceability is moving from a nice to have to a must have, because regulatory pressure, climate risk, customer expectations, and during this experience we start looking EUDR. EUDR ask for European operator, so for whom import the products like cocoa and coffee, but it applies also to other products like, for example, cattle, palm oil, wood, rubber, and so on. So the regulation asks that the people who import the product, the operator, need to have the capability to collect the product imported to the whole supply chain till the plot of harvesting the raw material. So to import a product in Europe from December, you need to have the whole traceability and the list of plot where the products come from. Then the operator need to have a due diligence process in order to exclude problems for deforestation, have a due diligence process in order to prove that the product is made in accordance with the legality of the country, of the origin country, and so on. So thanks to the traceability, we are able to collect all the information from the importation part and connect this information to the farmers, to the cooperative, and so on, in order to give all this data to the operator in Europe and comply with the regulation. So this is very tricky because if you don't have experience in field, probably you will face several problems in collecting this kind of data because it's very difficult to talk about GeoJSON data or traceability data with the cooperative of coffee and cocoa if are not the biggest one.
And this is such an important part. And I want to go, and we will discuss that. I want to ask to understand a bit more how it works. No, you said before you used the buzzword, the AI, blockchain, and technology. So how the blockchain and technology really help the agri-food supply chains, the suppliers, the other to be more transparent? And can you give us some example on how you do it, how you use technology to ensure that transparency?
Absolutely. I always say that blockchain is a consequence of digitalization because in a supply chain you have different actors. Everybody share data with their tool, application, and so on. And blockchain is a consequence because blockchain gives an immutable log of who did what and when, with signatures from the several parties. So it is very important in a supply chain to have a technology like blockchain, not to have a buzzword because you need blockchain and so on, but to have a technology like blockchain technology in order to have a common backbone that it's secure. So everybody can share information without any party in the supply chain after the first party that declared the data to change the data declared. So the blockchain technology is very useful because a farmer, a cooperative declare the price paid from the importer and so on, and the whole supply chain cannot change this information, but only to take it and add other information in the history of the product. So this is very important because in this way you can prove sustainability claim, you can prove quality information and so on because you cannot modify data. So for example, in the first project that we made with blockchain and traceability, we work with an important company like Domori that have a pretty quality chocolate with the sustainability, living income paid to the farmer and so on. And thanks to this technology, it is possible to prove that they paid premium price to the farmers and so on, because it's not declared by the Domor itself, it's declared by the cooperative and so on. So it's a backbone to share data in a very mutable way and in a very secure way.
And I want to go a subsequent question because that is also where the projects and that is the key part. We know that coffee, also from my experience, we know that I work with coffee farmers and other farmers and other. So we have farmers are usually small scale, small orders, very small plot, working cooperative, maybe in mountain remote areas. Cocoa as well in Uganda, I'm thinking, in the forest or the Ruwenzori or other area. So how do you ensure, to be accessible such a product to small producer and cooperative. How do you make sure that they also understand why it is important, and then how it also enables them, and if enables them to get a price premium for their product?
Absolutely. So as I said, the inclusivity of smallholder farmers, small cooperative, and so on, it is a very important point, because new compliance, new regulation, new requests from the European country, for example, should not exclude the people at the origin. So, for example, if a smallholder farmers cannot provide data, the whole chain fails, because the European operator cannot import from a specific origin, a specific cooperative, and so on. So what we have done for this particular gap is to build a mobile-first data collection application that have offline support, so can be used also offline, because in rural area probably you haven't connection with internet and so on, and enable simple data sharing with all the parties. One important point of the data sharing is the possibility to share data in a common standard. So if a cooperative collect the data, can share with the format required, for example, by the compliance, or required by retailers, and so on. So this is very important. And also the pricing, because we have a price for this kind of application that fits with small volumes, and so on. So as you said, this is very important, because thanks to this technology, you can provide something to small cooperative, smallholder farmer, that improve the quality of the information shared with the European operator, and in this way you can achieve a premium price, because thanks to this technology, for example, the European operator can reduce the cost for audit, can reduce the cost for training the cooperative on digital technology, training the cooperative on European compliance, and so on, because the application helps to have the information and not to receive another tool from another operator. That is what happen each time a new cooperative start to work with the European operator. And then we use also, now we are starting use the artificial intelligence, not for improved data collection and so on, but mainly for training reason. So what we are trying to achieve with artificial intelligence is the capability to train faster the cooperative and the smallholder farmer directly from the application. So in the application, what we are sharing now, it's tutorial, an academy on EUDR compliance, the data that must be collected, the due diligence process from the European operator, in order to onboard the cooperative directly on this kind of compliance, on this kind of regulation, in order to be sure that when they receive a request from a European operator, they have all the information, they know about regulation, and so on.
This is very important. I want to ask a subsequent question before going a bit deeper. Is it so the price for the application then can be tailored depending if you're big or small? Is it shared with the buyers? Let's say, let me be simplified, the buyers and the producers, or is mainly a responsibility of the producers?
No, it is shared, absolutely shared with from the buyer and the producer. In fact, if the buyer adopt Trusty, the application is free for all the supply chain. So the cooperative can use the application for free directly using the price paid by the buyer, I can say. If not, so if it is the producer that adopt the technology because they want to share directly the data with the not one buyer, but the whole buyer that they have, they can pay a little price for using the application to share the data.
Fantastic, and thank you for the clarification. And talking about collaboration, you mentioned the big names, no, especially in the cacao space, or also the e-com. You said Domori. You have even other big companies, no. So I want to ask, can you share some specific example, if it's possible, one or two that you have that really helped these partners? Because the big brands and then how trust is really impacted, the supply chain and helped from one side the big brands, but also the farmers.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I start with partners and then with mainly buyer, but starting talking about partners, we have partnership, for example, with RINA, that it's a certification authority in Italy, that it's an international company that use our technology to validate sustainability claims. So there are a lot of sustainability claims at the moment in coffee, in chocolate, but also in, for example, in the wine industry. And using our technology, RINA validate all the claims about a product, so all the information on a claims about a product, and the information in blockchain is inserted only when validated by the certification authority. This is very important because we have a new directive in Europe on greenwashing, green reporting, and so on. So it is very important to have data when you, for example, say that your product is 0 kilometer produced and so on. Another partner that for me it is very interesting, it's Pacorini Group, that it's a logistic operator in Italy, but also in an international company. And this, with them, we start working in the due diligence process for the EUDR, because they offer their service to roaster that import coffee in Europe, and through their service they can reduce the manual data entry for roasters. So it is very useful example of how a partner can do the job for the regulation instead of the roaster that cannot have the people to insert the data in the European portal and so on. And then we have several buyers that we work with, in particular with ECAM. We cover in the chocolate industry, we cover all the due diligence process for the EUDR. So we have something like 20,000 plot of land registered on our platform. We have a lot of quantity of cocoa traced to the origin and so on. So it is a very huge project. Another huge project is for another company in Colombia, in this case, that it's Luker Chocolate, that it's a chocolate maker in Colombia that use our platform for the traceability end-to-end and also for the compliance with the EUDR regulation.
And fantastic, and it's really something that really helps, also open up the markets, because one also talking with the small scale farmer, that is where also buyers, you can cut the middleman, the broker, we call it here in Kenya, and really get into the market where you can fetch higher prices. And traceability, being compliant, and be able not to sustain the claims, it's very important. Can I ask you, the other thing is how you reach the last mile, because of course it's important, the farmers, but also the consumer, because mainly, especially the people are listening to us, maybe they are consumers. So how Trusty also help the brands in that? So how to really make sure that what you buy today in the supermarket, with your retail online, it's really sustainable and it's compliant.
Absolutely, it's something that we start said with the RINA. So we start with the capability to collect the data from the whole supply chain with this backbone and blockchain technology. But in blockchain, it is real that garbage in, garbage out. So if you put information that are false in blockchain, you have timestamped false information. So we start working with RINA, but also with some other partner in order to audit at the sample or in a particular workflow and so on, to audit the information before timestamp it in blockchain. So we are working now in create a backbone, but a backbone in blockchain that is audited. And then we have the customer journey. So through a QR code and GS1 digital link, customers can receive all the information with storytelling, also information, not only data, but also storytelling capability for brand to promote their product, but sustained by real data and verifiable data. And now we are working on the customer to improve the customer engagement also with the avatar and the capability to not only share information, but also give to the customers the possibility to ask information, receive back directly from the history of the product.
Fantastic. And it's such an important part because it really creates also the connection. And it's so important. I've noticed I'm talking on other area where you can connect with the producer, you connect with the part, of course, it's also you are also part and you make also conscious choices. One thing I want to ask now to the Alessandro, the founder, Alessandro, the startup in this way. Because when you try to disrupt and we discussed this in many episodes and with other guests, so you are bringing innovative technology in a traditional sector, agriculture. We know that from the data I have with the farmers I work with, the smaller farmer, also the median age it's like 50, above 60, maybe 60 in the coffee or more. So how do you overcome resistance in the back? Which challenges you have noticed and encountered? So how to bring the technology, the remote, the app, and everything to a very traditional sector?
Yes, it's a very tricky question because what we would like to do is not to stop us in data collection, blockchain for audit data, and so on. But what we are looking for is to take not only this step in the supply chain, but also the finance step, because blockchain technology it is very interesting because then you can create, for example, through smart contract, through token, and so on. Also, not only data sharing, but also value sharing. So the possibility to share value between operators, farmers, other partners like banks, for example, and so on, and create a new business model for smallholder farmer, for cooperative, and so on. So this is what we would like to do. So you can imagine that we are now working in what we can do today, because today we need to do compliance, data collection, and so on, because the market requests this kind of technology, and we are starting work with several companies. So we are entering in the market with our solution. Our idea is to start from create a market, create stakeholder for our solution that use our solution, and then starting integrating our solution also other innovations. So it is very difficult because we are working on data collection, but we want to arrive in innovation in finance and so on. But what we are doing that because we need to have a market. So we need to have stakeholder, we need to have all the party inside our platform in order to start thinking about a new business model and trying to use this data not only for compliance, but also for example, value sharing, insurance, and so on.
When we were talking, it came to my mind that it's such an important way also to bring youth back to agriculture. I mean, sitting here in Africa, especially in Kenya, agriculture is the domain of the wazes, we said, of the old people. Where now there is a generational bias, and bringing technology, bringing also innovative finance, bringing to using data also to increase value can bring back also younger people, entrepreneurs, and people that they really can transform agriculture and also work on the, let's say, food security and also extracting more value from such important crops. And on that, how do you see the emerging trends? Since you are in discussing with people on the innovation that they can shape this agri-food supply chain, do you see an increase on compliance, a reduction? There is now a backlash on ESG. How do you see this trend going?
Yes, absolutely. The compliance, I think that it's the way everybody are on the same page for the future of agriculture, because we have a problem in agriculture with the climate risk, with climate change and so on, but also what you said, because the agriculture is older, so we need to take young people in the agriculture sector and so on. So we have this kind of problem that the agriculture sector need to change in the future years. The compliance, it's for us an opportunity, because it's the way that in the actual state of the art, technology are accepted, because if you haven't a technology, you cannot comply with some regulation. So it's an help for a company like us, because it's a driver for technology adoption. But it is important that we don't stop here. So it is important to think about the real problem, that it's not solved by a compliance, by regulation, of course. So we need to think how this technology that now we see that someone started to adopt it for compliance, how this technology can also improve the quality of life of farmers. For example, there is a cool project on family insurance for farmers, other cool project on parametric insurance for climate risk, and so on. So we need to look at this kind of business model after the technology is adopted. What we see, we are working a lot on EUDR, because what we see is the possibility to know the plot of land of farmers. So thanks to EUDR, you need to have the plot of land of the wood cooperative, the plot of land of the farmers, and so on. And then you can use this kind of data, the same data with the satellite image, in order to, for example, check if there is the possibility of generate carbon credit for sequestration in agroforestry sector, for example. Or, for example, if you have the possibility to have biodiversity credit because they produce in a way that it's more sustainable from others' way of produce. Or, for example, you can have the possibility to implement parametric insurance, because you know where the plot is, you know if there is a weather that doesn't produce, that the yield is reduced because the weather it's not so good in the year, so you can have an insurance on that. So it is important not to stop in the compliance, but to think how this technology can improve the quality of life of farmers, in order that younger people have an incentive to work in the rural area and so on, because this is the real problem, as you say.
And it's such an important enabler. No, I can see how it can trickle. When you talk about insurance, when you talk about that, so if you have an asset that becomes also digitalized in a way, if I may resume, then of course it's easier to be insured. There is also it becomes also, it can become a collateral. It can be warehoused, and then so you can get loans and other. So this transformation can really unlock a lot of impact, especially for rural area. And as we are going towards the close, I want to ask you, as a founder, as somebody that has worked in this world and is still working, and you have very bold idea, because from traceability you want to go finance, to work, to carbon credits, really how to trickle down and expand. Maybe if you can give us the 3 lessons that you have learned in your entrepreneurial journey, and if you want to share also some common mistakes that maybe some people they think they need to avoid.
Yes, for in my opinion and my little experience, because I have 10 years of company and technology and so on, so it's a very little experience. I have made a lot of errors. So starting from my errors, my lesson, but what I need to remember every day is to start with the real pain and not with the technology. because in our experience, we start with the technology always. So create technology and then searching for a problem. So we have technology in search of problems always. So start with the real pain. It is very important. And we start to do that. For example, in Ivory Coast, in our first project in traceability, we goes with the technology in Ivory Coast to trace the cocoa supply chain, and we finalize that anything work in the field, and we start to recreate all the solution. So start with the real pain. It is very important. Then I think that build trust before scale also it's another important point, because we think a lot about how to scale our solution, how to go into several company, how to increase the market fast and so on. But what we see now is that that is very important to have partners to work with, because if you have the trust of a partner, like for example Rina, Pacorini, but also Bayer and so on, it's easier than to increase the market, reach several company, and also to think about how to scale the solution to serve more people and so on. And then one of our main point is to keep all the parties in our solution. So to create a solution that can work for smallholder farmers, but also for the European operators. So this is very important, because if you start working with large company, probably you will have a solution that doesn't work for a smallholder farmer. In a supply chain, you haven't only large companies, so your solution need to be adopted by all the parties in the supply chain. So keep the democratization, keep the easy to use and so on at the core of the solution. It is very important, because in this way you can fit for large company, but also for the whole supply chain.
Alessandro, I mean, those are three very important points. I've seen many startups going all the way around and bringing a wonderful technology, and then nothing works in the field.
Sometimes you learn the lesson.
Or people that they burn cash all the time, burning the runway and then trying to scale without that. So it's such an important point. And I really want to thank you for your wonderful insights. For us, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and we are sure that we will keep in contact and discuss even more this work, because it's such an important topic, traceability for sustainability innovation. Thank you so much, Alessandro.
Are you satisfied after this wonderful episode? Let's continue together our sustainability journey.